Imagine having that at home, but more than that, imagine having that at your hospital. So I don't know, a few months back, we wanted to check some ultrasound machines, and unfortunately it was so unwell built that we couldn't even call it hacking, because it was all an old XP Windows machine full of holes. So whatever you saw here, maybe house and locks, imagine now on your medical services, etc. And the second part I wanted to mention is how to connect this to the kind of supply chain as discussed before. So inside IoTs, also people use multiple level of, they want to use open source, they want to use innovation, so they use multiple level of packages. So they take packages out from the market that are open source, and they put them inside an IoT. But now imagine that one of these packages have something planted inside. What's your ability to really update it in real time and make it secure next? So the next speaker is going to move us from kind of house-based IoTs into the financial world. In my speech, I jumped over the motive, but the biggest motive for attacking, obviously, is money. So that speaks very well with the next presentation, where we will also touch on IoTs such as an ATM machines, which are kind of big IoTs holding lots of money. So it's my pleasure to invite to stage Mark Gazit, the CEO of ThetaRay.
Can you hear me? Great. And it's a great pleasure to be here. So I will tell you a little bit how bad guys are using artificial intelligence and how we can use AI in this new world of cyber to fight with threats, maybe the most existential threats that we currently face. But before that, just a few data points, and I guess you will hear more and more about it. Next year, there will be 4.3 devices for every person living on the face of Earth. And by the way, if we talk about data, every 2 days, we create more data that was created from the beginning of Earth till 2003. And if I can combine those numbers, next year we'll have 26 billion objects connected to each other. So the data is there. Data is available. Everybody collects the data. Banks and financial institutions do collect the data. By the way, banks have access to even more data because of KYC regulation, know your customer regulation, so they can force you to provide private information about yourself if you would like to open an account. And still, in spite of all the technology and all the data financial institutions have, it looks like there is more fraud and more money laundering is going on. Every week we hear about HSBC paying a fine of $2 billion, Danske Bank CEO being fired, ING CFO let go, Deutsche Bank probably will now pay huge fines. And the question is, why it happens? And the answer is because about 5 years ago, the world of financial crime has totally changed. Now it's in the realm of cyber world. If you think about it, today nobody goes to a branch of a bank and try to shoot in there to steal money. By the way, it still happens in Hollywood movies. But in reality, you put a server somewhere in a remote country that steals 25 cents from a bank account. We as human beings never complain about 25 cents, especially if I call it iTunes transaction. But the server will use artificial intelligence, will do it hundreds of millions of times, and then bad guys will take $20, $30 million, disconnect the link, and disappear. Governments jumping into this space as well. It's not a secret that North Korea financed their nuclear activities by stealing money using cybersecurity attacks. They stole $81 million recently from Bank of Bangladesh through SWIFT network. In general, the amount of money being stolen every year in 2017 was over $16 billion. 18, we were waiting for numbers. There are probably even more. But the biggest problem is not just fraud. It's money laundering. And the money laundering has changed as well. Now today, money laundering is not just about tax evasion. It's about terrorist funding, human trafficking, narco trafficking, sex slavery, terrible stuff. And the estimation of the World Bank is that between 3 to 6% to 5% of the world GDP, which is about $2 to $4 trillion is money laundering. And by the way, all the institutions feel the same pains, whether it's financial institutions, airline companies, even critical infrastructure, because everything has to be connected. You will not go and buy an airline plane ticket by coming to a branch and physically buying it. You want to do it from remote. You will not open an account in a bank if you can't do it remotely. So banks have to be open. They have to allow remote connectivity. But the data is much more complex. Bad guys are using more and more advanced technologies. And banks have to cut costs. It's a big problem. And if we focus on financial crime, it's money laundering, is online fraud, is ATM fraud. And Dorit, I promised that I will show you how to steal money from ATMs. Don't try it at home because we'll catch you. And of course, cryptocurrency. Now, but banks do have existing systems. So why existing systems do not work? Because they're all based on rules and thresholds and signatures. Basically, the systems that banks are currently using are based on understanding and learning from the past. But the bad guys are actually using totally different technologies. And even if you use machine learning like neural networks, it's still limited. You can take the best neural network, you show it 1 million pictures of a butterfly, it will identify all the butterflies in the world. But show it a snake or show it a scorpion, it will miss it. Because nobody taught the system how snake looks like. Now, poor banks, they have to deal with anti-money laundering, otherwise they will pay huge fines. So they do what they call anomaly detection. Show me everything that is not a butterfly. And then they get a level of false alarms that is 99.5%. For every true alert, you have 200 false alarms. I know that you came from 80 countries. Did it happen to you that you try to use your credit card in a different country and it doesn't work? And you get this SMS, is it really you? It happened to all of us. This is false alarm. And when banks are managed to write some rules, the pace of change is so fast that the rules are obsolete. Now, this is an interesting slide. The CEO of one of the largest banks told me this story that Germans, World War I, came from tanks to fight with horses and muskets. And you can imagine what was the end of this battle. So they told me we come with a knife to fight a gunfight. So how did we solve the problem? We use technology that is based on artificial intelligence, very unique one, developed by Professor Averbuch from Tel Aviv University. So the university is a shareholder, a small shareholder in the company. And it's a software that we installed in a bank. It analyzes financial transactions as well as network data, and without any prior knowledge, finds those threats. And of course, presents it with a beautiful user interface. And it's a pretty unique one. I think it's the beginning of era where computers have traits like intuition, like common sense, gut feelings. We call it intuitive AI. And it's basically connecting the dots. You know, for us human beings, it's very easy to understand what's going on. When you send your kids to a new school, they immediately know who are good guys and who are bad guys. You don't need to teach your kids how to do it. Or when you drive a car, you take a new car, maybe it's a rented car, never touched it before, you don't even know how the engine looks like, and you hear weird noise, your brain knows that something wrong with your car. Computers couldn't do it before. Now, luckily for us, they can do it, and let me show you a few examples. So if we talk about anti-money laundering, one of the largest banks in the world, and by the way, all the largest banks in the world are using our technology, they had 120,000 alerts, which is very difficult to analyze. Just by using artificial intelligence, the numbers will reduce to 4,000 alerts a year instead of 120. But what we found is actually when you use artificial intelligence, our system identifies the threats or money laundering attempts 70 days before the actual attempt to take money off the bank and conduct a crime happens. Almost like Minority Report. And I promised you ATMs. And you know, today ATM is not a financial device anymore. It's an IoT device. It's connected to the internet. You can find ATM in any 7-Eleven shop, in a street. Now, we all know that if something is connected to the internet is connected to that device. Now, if you open ATM, you will see that it's a very protected machine. You have a big safe there. Money is there. Dispenser, which is a motor that dispenses the money, is in the safe. But the computer itself, it's outside. You can literally open the access to the computer using paperclip, and then using thumb drive, you can infect it. And when you infect the ATM computer, you have full control of the ATM. So you can put some server in some remote country, and every time you push a button there, money is coming out of the ATM somewhere on Broadway or in Tel Aviv or in Paris. Now, I know that it sounds like science fiction, but over $1 billion have been stolen this way. I recommend you to take a picture of this slide. It was published by Europol, and then I took it down. I wasn't serious. Now, but they really describe how it happened. It's organized crime. They infected the upgrade server of the ATM. So instead of going ATM after ATM, when the bank did an upgrade, all 10,000 ATMs had a new version with a backdoor, and then they hacked the ATM. They never deposited more than 5 notes, and usually there are 10,000 notes at the ATM, so nobody paid attention. They shut down the camera, erased all the traces. Perfect crime. All you need is a money mule that will come at 3 a.m. and take the money. 100 banks in 14 countries in Europe. Unfortunately, in this case, the money was converted into Bitcoin and then financed human trafficking. Our system now, as far as I know, the only one that can catch this type of activities. Now, before I finish, just another use case, which is a terrible one, and I encourage you to come to the AI session governed by Professor Vitar Matania on Thursday. You will hear from Rochelle and Jim how we use artificial intelligence to fight with human trafficking. We just signed an agreement or LOI with the United Nations to use it in 160 countries. I think it's extremely important. It's a terrible thing. So just come back to the artificial intelligence and real results. We found that when you use AI in this new world of cyber to catch those really bad guys, we usually find between 3 to 6 times more issues, more threats, but we do it with a level of false alarms that is usually up to 100 times lower than existing systems. So the investigators in the bank can act much faster and make sure that we avoid and eliminate crime much more effectively. Now, just one thing I want to sort of touch on artificial intelligence. Because people tell me, look, isn't it dangerous? You have all those machines and then you have AI, and the AI is actually intuitive AI. You give computers things that we thought that we human beings have monopoly on them. Elon Musk said that AI will ruin the world. So I have to say that my view is different. I do believe that AI is extremely important. Senator Lieberman mentioned the invention of print. I don't know if you know, but when print was invented, people said, that's it, it's the end of human memory. We will not remember anything. When cars were created, people said that will ruin our family units. When telephone was created, people said, that's it, no more visits and friends. I had the pleasure to establish the first internet service provider in Israel called NetVision, and we were told that it will totally change the way our kids communicate with us. And by the way, it's true. Any new technology creates some threats, but it also creates huge upside. And in the case of artificial intelligence, I can tell you that bad guys are using AI already. They have been using it for a few years, whether we like it or not. So I believe that we, as human beings, have the obligation to take AI, to train AI, to breed AI, and to make artificial intelligence our digital guard. And it's great to work in a company that doubles itself each and every year, protects the largest banks in the world, but it's also great to work in a company that makes this world of connected devices much, much safer world. So thank you very much.